people, it's about 8% of our population. But importantly, we have almost 80 million people that have prediabetes, a term we use for the evidence of metabolic defects suggesting that you're likely to develop type 2 diabetes. That's 35% of all the adults in my country, about 50% of people over the age of 65. The progression for prediabetes to diabetes to type 2 diabetes goes between 5 to 15% a year. Now, these are old numbers. These numbers are changing as I'm standing here. So probably we're talking 83, 84 million people with prediabetes, and now we're 30 million people with diabetes. It's hard to get statistics to keep up with the growth of this problem. I tried to look it up in Mexico. A little harder to find the data here. 22% of the population of Mexico, which is the various estimates, have diabetes and prediabetes. That's a very large percentage of the country. And they say, I don't know if this is correct, so I'm going to be able to correct me, they say almost 44% of all adults have prediabetes, evidence of metabolic defect. Even if these numbers are inflated by 2, it's still an extraordinarily large percentage of your population. The problem with diabetes is growing everywhere in the world. This is a famous slide showing diabetes rates from 1980 up to 2010 in the United States. You can see how rapidly that line is growing. And if you took 2016 and put out here, we'd be about there. Okay? Extraordinary acceleration. So why is this happening? We have to ask ourselves the question. Why is this happening? What's going on? How come in the last 40 years or so, we've quadrupled the rate of diabetes in my country, and you're in the process of doing the same here? Well, Lewis Carroll was one of my favorite authors when I was a child. He wrote Alice in Wonderland. And I think he might have been called a prophet, because he wrote back in 1824, the way to make the oyster cry before we have our chat, some of us are out of breath and all of us are fat. What we see is the obesity rates of people have gone dramatically, and you notice that Mexico is right here. Okay? You're pretty busy. That's 26.9%. That was the 2012 data that I could find. Seriously escalating in comparison to many parts of the world. This is a graph from the Centers for Disease Control showing the changes in obesity in the United States from 1994 to the year 2010. Again, that's 6 years ago. You notice that as we move through space, we go from a fairly modest percentage all the way up to almost 26% of the states in red have obesity. Okay? That's an extraordinary acceleration in obesity. And that's 2010. In 2016, it just released the data. They had to come up with a new color. Red no longer was enough. They have a new color now to talk about populations where over 35% of the states in the United States have frank obesity. What's interesting is when you look at diabetes in the same years, what you see is the exact same progression. You see that as we become fatter and fatter, we become more likely to have type 2 diabetes. Diabetes is characterized by insulin resistance, which is modeled after obesity. Obesity interferes with the body's ability to convert what you eat into useful forms of food and fuel. Why does this happen? Well, dietary intake has increased dramatically in the past 30 years, particularly in the United States. All portion sizes are much larger. We know that there's 2 to 8 times larger portion sizes than what the Food and Drug Administration in the United States recommends. We know that more people eat at fast food restaurants than ever before. And I always like to ask this, if you ever have a chance to do this in Mexico. How many of you have eaten in the last week at a fast food or a quick food restaurant? Just to show of hands. All right. Thank you for being honest. I appreciate that. We all do it. We're busy. We're busy people. Things are going on. We have to get from one place to the other. Get our kids from one activity to the other. Getting fast food is an easy way to do it. However, it's been shown in the United States that fast food can through what I've been reading. Mexico currently has one of the highest obesity and weight rates in the world. Some people say 71%. Now again, I keep finding different data. This was a 2013 study that said your obesity rate is 71%. How many of you think that that is correct? Show me. A few. How many of you think it's worse? Okay. Well, let's look at the bright side, as you guys are saying. How much worse could it possibly get? Well, the answer is quite a bit. It's more than simply changes in our eating habits. In fact, I like to argue that we have changed our fundamental culture, the way we look at food and the way we look at obesity. And this is particularly true in the United States, so I'll try to restrict my arguments to there. These are two famous commercials. I love this one. Smaller is better. It works only for cabinets. The bacon. This is a very large hamburger, lots of strips of bacon, cheese, 2 patties. This is a 2,800 calorie sandwich, which is the number of calories recommended to the average person in a day. Okay? No French fries, a Papa Street doesn't run that. No Papa Street does, no Coca-Cola. You got to look up, you can eat a meal just for lunch, which would be 4,000 plus calories, or almost double the day before dinner. Supersized meat is now a term that is recognized in the slang dictionaries in the United States. Supersized, make it bigger, make it bigger. Companies learn that we will buy it, they will make it, they make it bigger. I looked up what careers of your fast food places. Yes, we have to. This is the other problem. Everything we've done in our environments is designed to reduce the amount of physical labor that we have to do, right? We have drive-through windows in all over the place in the United States. I can do all my banking and all my meals inside my car. Okay? I don't have to get up to turn my television one way or the other. I can just sit there and just bang away from my chair. When I was a young man, we used to have 5, 6 brothers and sisters. We used to have fist fights and we had to get up and turn the knob on the TV. Those days are gone. They are absolutely gone. Everything we do is easy, quick, and in my state where I'm originally from, we were farmers, farming state. People used to work really hard on the farms, right? They labored. Now they climb up the side of the combine and drive around 40 acres and sit there and eat while they're doing it. It's just a change in the way we think about our environment, what we do. These are two very obvious images. What do you see? Elevators. It's difficult in unique buildings to find the stairs. You see the elevators pretty quick, but you don't see the stairs, right? There's no longer one we can focus on. And what do you notice is missing from this picture? What's wrong there? Anybody yell it out? No sidewalks, right? This is a roadway. It is in an urban center in the United States. This woman who is taking her child is walking down. In the United States, so many people are hit by cars on roads like this that people erect crosses and little memorials to them. You drive by and see them all the time. There are people who get killed because they can't safely walk. So are you going to walk at these conditions? Of course you're not going to. It's a silly thing to do. We have built our environment to facilitate obesity. This is a common image. You see this all the time. And sometimes it goes to after age triggers. This used to be a very common image in suburban areas where people live. They take their dog out for a walk. I swear to God, this is a true photo that I took myself. Okay, so what's the impact of this? We've changed how we think about food. We look forward to very large portion sizes. We look forward to not having to expend energy. We are able to cheaply get high-fat, high-salt meals, and there's a lot of reasons why it's easier to do that. But what's the impact of this? Well, I looked at the diseases, reproductive nutrition-related diseases, and non-communicable diseases. And what you see is these are going down, and these are going up. The cause of death, folks, while bacteria is a serious infection, it's a serious problem, very serious problem. Actual presentation on this. It's not totally the whole story. In fact, chronic conditions, and particularly diabetes, is on the rise, and it's moving quickly, and it kills people. It kills them all the time. In the United States, diabetes is the 5th leading cause of death. The 5th. So what can we do about it? Let's get into it. What can we do about it? I want to share with you a study that I worked with. I was a principal investigator in this study called the Diabetes Prevention Program. This was a study designed to look at, in a randomized controlled trial, with 3,000 people, all who had pre-diabetes, defined pre-diabetes, whether or not we could prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes, or at least delay it. We had an intensive lifestyle intervention, which was a 16-week curriculum that people had to go through once a week to learn different ways to eat and increase physical activity at a rate of 150 minutes a week. That's the equivalent of 20 minutes a day of walking, brisk walking. Another group got metformin, which is a medication that's used to treat diabetes, but in this case, it's treating people who did not have diabetes, which is used off the label. And the third condition was a placebo control. They were getting what looked like metformin, but in fact, it was not an effective medication. What came out in this study, very famous study now, is in fact lifestyle and modest weight loss. When I say modest weight loss, you have to lose between 5 to 7% of your baseline body weight. So for a very large person, that's 10, 12, maybe 15 pounds. For a person that weighs well over 200 pounds. Okay? It reduced the risk by 58%, which is a gigantic risk reduction. Versus those who took metformin, a diabetic medication, reduced their risk by 31%. So lifestyle was twice as effective as medication and didn't have the cost associated with medication and another side effect. This is what's important to me and important to the scientific world. This intervention, the lifestyle intervention, worked for everybody. It did not matter who they are. Of the 3,000 people in this study, half of them are minority populations. That means African Americans, Latinos, Asian Pacific Islanders, and Native Americans. Okay? Huge Latino population in this study in places like San Antonio and San Diego, places where there's a lot of crossover from the border. And in fact, it worked with everybody. It didn't matter what group you were in, it was equally effective. It worked for men and women, and it didn't matter if you were skinnier when you started or very fat when you started, it was universally effective. And it worked for all adults, and particularly those over the age of 60. For people over the age of 60, the risk reduction was 70%. Okay? Now, I don't know about you all, but I've been clinical trials for the past 45 years, right? And it's pretty rare for a clinical trial that's this potent, this effective with everybody. Usually you see women do differently than men, or you see, old do differently than young, that kind of thing. Not here. This sucker worked, and it worked well. Here's the problem. The DPP study was an efficacy trial. There was no thought given to scaling the intervention, and I'll call it scale. In other words, we had $190 million US to throw at 3,000 people. Okay? You can do a lot with $190 million. And because it was getting people to goal, the only concern, creating that 7% weight loss was the only issue. I could do anything I wanted to do. I could say that the cooking classes, I could use your gym membership, I could buy you tennis shoes, whatever it took. Well, that's not a good public health model. So here we find ourselves today. This study that was done almost 20 years ago at this point. Here we find ourselves today with these exploding numbers in your country and mine about diabetes. It's happening at exceptionally high rates, right? And we have to figure out how do you put diabetes prevention into social, economic, and environmental reasons, and it's very difficult to change it. It's difficult. It requires structured interventions. If you're going to do a lifestyle intervention, which I would recommend because of the potency of it, you got to ask yourself, are you going to do this in your office, or are you going to refer them out? Are you going to send them someplace where they can get the kind of support that they need to modify their lifestyle so they can get moderate and sustained weight loss? So how do you identify high-risk people? You need a clinical protocol. If you're a practicing provider, you need to place into your system a protocol that systematically screens people for prediabetes. Okay? That's a combination of at least three things. First, body mass index, height and weight ratio. Okay? People with larger body mass index are more likely to have prediabetes. That's been shown 100 times. Second, family history. We know that if they have a first-degree relative, by that I mean a person who is their father, their mother, their sister, or their brother, if they have a first-degree relative that has diabetes, the chances are much better that they will more likely have it. There's the genetics involved with this. And so you need to look for that. Finally, you need to look for the metabolic defect. You need to show that the fact, while they're not diagnosed as diabetic, they in fact have evidence of moving that way, that they're no longer at a normal metabolic rate of metabolism. A few ways you can do that. One is to do it by hospital hemoglobin A1C. And we know that if you do one and you see something above 5.7 to below 6.4, that is a diagnosis of prediabetes. Simple test, it will give you the answer. We also know that you can look at a fasting blood sugar. Fasting, I mean, like 8 hours without food. I know that that's difficult, our patients hate it, but they have to come in early in the morning, but it is diagnostic. If their blood sugar is between 100 and 125 milligrams per deciliter, they have impaired fasting glucose, and another definition of pre-diabetes. We also know, since many patients do not believe in fasting, if you do a casual blood glucose and use what we call a risk screener. If a person has 110 milligrams with assessment of when they last ate, if they've eaten on the way to your office, that doesn't count. If they're eating in the waiting room, that doesn't count. If they haven't eaten for at least 2 hours, and ones that are better, that's probably diagnostic. And then you can give them a risk screener. I'm going to recommend the one by the American Diabetes Association. I'm the immediate past president of that organization, so I got to stay loyal to the group. It's a very good measure. It is in both English and Spanish. It's 9 questions, and it gives you a score. And if the score is higher, your risk is higher. If the score is lower, it's lower. Pretty simple. Finally, you can do a oral glucose tolerance test, which is the gold standard. How many of you would like to do oral glucose tolerance test on your capture patients? That's what I thought. Really, okay, not easy to do. Okay, so you don't want to do that. I mean, you can, but it's difficult. Who do you test? That's a good question. You have to sort of stratify your patients. People over the age of 45, as you get older, your risk goes up. So that's a good place to start. Secondly, if they have a BMI that's greater than 25, unless your patient is Asian, by Asian I mean from either Southeast Asia or Far East Asia, they can have a lower BMI because they don't have the same insulin resistance phenomena that non-Asians do. They have an insulin secretion defect. They don't make as much insulin ratio. So you can actually, it doesn't take as much weight to make them insulin resistant. But better than 25, screen them. Finally, you want to ask an additional risk factor. Are they a member of a high-risk ethnic population? What's the number one ethnic population in the world for risk of diabetes in America? You're number 2. It's Native Americans. Native Americans, 50% of adults in tribes have diabetes, which is genetically wired in. Then it turns out Latinos. Latinos have a pretty high risk. And it's probably a genetic factor working here, but it's high, it's very high, followed by African Americans, and then followed by Caucasian. So if you find any of those groups, go ahead and screen. You want to find out if they have first-degree relative with diabetes. HDL is less than 40 in men or 50 in women, or that have triglycerides above 150, squared. Finally, if you have a patient that has gestational diabetes, diabetes during pregnancy, that is the #1 risk factor for converting to type 2 diabetes. Extremely high conversion rate. About 30% of women with GDM, if they gain weight, will go on to develop type 2 diabetes. If you don't know their GDM status, you want to see if they had a macrosomic baby, a baby over 9 pounds at birth. If they report that they had a nice, healthy 10-pound boy or girl, and they didn't get assessed for gestational diabetes, go ahead and screen. This chance is pretty good that they're going to fall into that category. Finally, people with a diagnosis of polycystic ovary syndrome are also at high risk. Any of these, to me, would be an indicator in my patient population that this is something that should be screened for pre-diabetes. Because let's face one thing, once you get the diagnosis of diabetes, you can't take it back. As we say in Indiana, we want to catch the horse before it gets out of the barn. You have to stop it before it happens. Now, what can you do with drugs? Metformin has been proven. Also, thiazide diones have been shown to be effective. They have some secondary problems with them, such as pre-fracture rate, edema, for example. But they are effective. They do work. There are GLP analogs that are questionable. I've been informed here that they're not very available here, so forget that one. But if you get TZDs, forget that. TZDs are shown in studies to reduce risk by as much as 65%. However, they have side effects that are expensive and they actually the liver function. So it's something to think about. In terms of lifestyle, you can counsel in your office. You can do it. You can talk to your patients more aggressively than perhaps you do. The gold standard is the DPP, which is a 16-session curriculum. It's been transformed for group delivery, and it's been done by the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association in the United States. It's a very widely available community group facility. It has gymnasiums and classroom capacity. And it's also been used by the National Diabetes Prevention Program, which has been put forth by the Centro for Disease Control. All of these are available to me in the United States. I suspect you don't have them years available here in Mexico. However, the question you're going to have to ask yourself as a concerned group of public health people is how can you build a community capacity to deliver these kinds of programs? The programs are effective, they are evidence-based, they can be done, and they don't cost a lot of money. So your job will be here today to figure out how to get it done. If you're going to counsel, there's something called the National Diabetes Education Program in the United States. You can look at this with Google, the National Diabetes Education Program, NDEP. They developed a set of materials for physicians and patients called the Game Plan, which gives very basic information but structured support for a person to try to do this at home on their own. And the studies I'm going to show you in a minute, this actually results in at least a 2% weight loss. There's a funny thing about weight loss, just keep this in mind. For every kilo a person with pre-diabetes loses, for every 2.2 pounds, they reduce their risk for diabetes by 11 to 12%. It doesn't take extraordinary weight loss to make a huge difference. A huge difference. Metabolic efficiency improves dramatically, and this is true for your patients with diabetes as well. So the belief that we all have that nobody is working in those things. So they get a very unique population, which is good for them. It's not good for the other 75% of people at high risk. They can't take advantage of it. So think that one through. And then you've got to ask yourself the question, I guess, what's your capacity? It is noble to do lifestyle intervention. It's very much necessary. It might not take really immersive so in yours. But you got to have the willpower, the energy, the resources, the time allocation to pull it off. And if you don't, then you need to look for a model where you can send somebody to a place where in fact they can devote themselves to that. So to me, I think we have to have a partnered approach towards prevention. We got to involve formal healthcare, and we have to involve communities. I think healthcare is important because in order to really assess who's at risk and who you should put the resources in, you got to measure glucose. You got to have glucose measure. You do. And that's usually done in healthcare setting. I don't think people in the street are offering glucose, testing for, any sort of value. We know the risk-benefit assessment needs to be done in the healthcare system. Not everybody should do physical activity. Not everybody should take metformin. Not everybody should do lifestyle. You need to have somebody who's qualified to help you make that judgment and make it appropriate. You need to have prescriptive advice. What is the role for different approaches? Your patients need to be informed and educated. For example, you do nothing more than convince your patients to lose 5% of their body weight, that 30-kilo weight loss is an unrealistic goal and not necessary for better health. You're doing extraordinary public health work right there. Finally, in my country, that's the gateway reimbursement. If we want to get diabetes prevention lifestyle paid for, which we can now do, we had to have doctors make prescriptions to get it. At the community level, that's where we can take advantage of population resources. The environment is where people live, they don't have to go somewhere, this is good. We know that we can use education by schools and media out in the communities to make people more aware of different options and different choices. We can use lower intensity programs. You can do things that have variable contact rates and different time commitments and things like that when you're in the community. And finally, there is the opportunity to do risk assessment. I have personally screened probably 10,000 people out in the community. We set up at a church, we set up at a community center, we set up in a mall, and we screen. And it doesn't take a lot to do it. It just takes some time with the people to staff. So it's a reciprocal interaction. And as you move forward in this country dealing with your rising epidemic of pre-diabetes and diabetes, I really suggest that you need to start creatively looking for these types of interactions and these solutions. Now I'm going to show you 2 examples of this that worked out for us. The first one is called DEPLOY, Diabetes Education Prevention with the Lifestyle Intervention offered at the YMCA. We chose the YMCA. Why? Well, there's a lot of them. There's over 2,700 YMCAs in the United States. Most people, about 55-60% of U.S. citizens live within 10 miles of the YMCA. If I ask this audience in the United States, how many of you know this YMCA, almost everybody will raise their hand. So they're everywhere, very accessible. They will offer lower cost programs that we could do in the medical center, right? We use lay people that we train to deliver the program. We use people from the Y instead of using an expensive nurse or a doctor or something like that. The other thing that was attractive for me as a public health person was they have a policy of operating to achieve cost recovery only for the use of their facilities, and they will turn no person away with the inability to pay. Meaning that you can attend for free if you're really poor. That's a lovely public health model. And so we use it. And they've also done national programs for other health things like teaching life-saving and CPR and things like that. So we did a comparative effectiveness trial, we did a group-based DPP program at the Y versus brief education where we used the National Diabetes Education Program, which I showed you, had almost 100 people there. The question we were asking was very simple. Could lay people at the Y do this? Could they pull it off? Because prior to that, the only people that were done it were highly qualified healthcare professionals in highly resource-rich environments. Here's the data. And what you can see is the gentleman carrying the chair. And what he recognized. These are the YMCA groups, and you can see this is going out for 28 months.
people in the control group who literally, we saw them, we screened them, we said, we'll see you in 6 months, we get more blood, we'll see you in a year, you know, we didn't touch them. But we gave them self-help materials, and they all lost 2 to 3% of the body weight. And people ask me, Dave, why did that happen? Why did that happen? I'll tell you why it happened. Because these are all people that in the darkness of night watched their mom and their dad die of diabetes. They saw the dark side of this disease. And this is not a disease where you flame out. It's a disease where you rust away. And they were afraid. And they were motivated. And when you tell them the numbers, like, look at this number, this blood test means your risk of developing diabetes is pretty high. And if you don't do some things, it's going to happen to you. Okay? It changed their lives, and on their own, they lost 3%. That's a 30% reduction in risk. So if you did nothing more in your practice than hand out self-help materials, which are available on the internet, you can make an impact that is substantial. This shows what happened in cholesterol. The reason we measure that is the diet that we recommend is a low-fat diet. So fewer of your daily calories coming from a fat source. And in fact, the people in the intervention group all dropped their cholesterol. People up here in the control didn't. They still lost weight. They were doing something right. They were focusing on fat calories. In terms of cost, this shows you what it cost to do the original DPP, and we got it down to $250 US for a year. $200 a year is actually a public health office cost savings. So, one last one. It's a good start to have the YMCA in the United States do diabetes prevention. 2,700 entities, you get a lot of people. It's not enough. There's almost 90 million people in the U.S. with pre-diabetes. What do we do next? So our next study was to take a commercial weight loss program called Weight Watchers. Is there Weight Watchers in Mexico? Yes, no, it's pretty popular in the U.S. There's a lot of them. They're the leading commercial global provider of weight management services. They teach people to lose weight by adopting a lifestyle. That's different from telling them to eat a special diet. Diets do not last, folks. They do not last. People can sustain that for a while, and they slip and they gain weight back. Almost legendary. Weight Watchers takes the same approach as they did DPP. Let's reorganize how you think about food, not say there's a good food or a bad food, a different way you might use it. And they have very clinically proven evidence-based stuff that shows the fact the program is pretty effective. The other thing that is interesting to me from a public health perspective is that they have about 1.7 enrollments each year and 1 million signups for their online service. They have an online ability as well as a live ability included. They hold 25,000 meetings each week. Okay? And 5,000 of those are workplaces. So that's a pretty big reach. And now if you add that with the YMCA, you're talking, close to 27, almost 30,000 opportunities for people to get to it. Folks, we've got to stop this epidemic, and now this happens at our watch. It's time for us to step up. So this was criticized by some because it was a commercial program, and others as visionary because it's so big. And to make it, the other thing I like about it, people who run the meetings, they were all people that lost weight in the program. If you're a coach in Weight Watchers, you have to not only lost weight, you must keep it off. If you gain weight back, you're no longer a coach. Okay? That's how it works. So we tried Weight Watchers. Let's give it a shot. We randomized 250 subjects, all diagnosed with impaired glucose tolerance. We compared them with the same self-help program that we used in the decoy study, because we needed to at least have something. I don't like to control group that gets nothing. That's unethical to me. We collected data for over 24 months. In 6 months, the people in Weight Watchers lost 5.6% of the weight versus 1% of the controls. At 12 months, that sustained a little higher to 5.8%. And we just finished the 2-year data, and they maintained their weight loss. So, is it a perfect solution? No. Is it a necessary solution? You bet. We need every avenue